The fluorescent lights hummed softly above, an ever-present drone that seemed to amplify the silence in the conference room. They were the kind of lights that cast a sterile glow over everything, washing the room in an unyielding brightness that left no corner in shadow. Despite their insistence on illumination, they seemed to highlight the stark emptiness of the room, rather than fill it with life. The table, long and polished to a high sheen, stretched out like a runway, its surface broken only by the scattered remnants of forgotten meetings. A notepad here, a stray pen there. In the midst of this scene, there she was, sitting cross-legged on the plush carpet that ran wall to wall, its fibers thick and inviting. The presentation slides played out on the wall behind her, casting a dim glow across her face. The slides changed at timed intervals, the images shifting from graphs to bullet points, but she didn't seem to notice. Her focus was elsewhere, her attention drawn to something far more compelling than quarterly projections or marketing strategies. Her shoes lay abandoned by the door, heels tipped sideways like toppled chess pieces left in the wake of a game abruptly ended. It was a detail that suggested a comfort in the space, a willingness to let down the guard that so many of us wore like armor in this corporate battleground. "Leave your phone outside," she said, her voice hushed but firm, as if she were issuing a command rather than a request. I hesitated, my hand hovering over the device in my pocket. It was a lifeline, a tether to the world outside this room, yet her words compelled me to consider releasing it, if only for a moment. Her eyes, a shade of brown that caught the light just right, locked onto mine with an intensity that was hard to ignore. It was a gaze that felt both intrusive and comforting, like she was reaching into the parts of myself I'd kept hidden. This was Samantha Blake, my colleague, a woman of 34, known for her strategic mind as much as for her inscrutable calm. Her reputation preceded her, a mix of admiration and mystery that left many guessing where they stood in her estimation. Today, though, there was something different, something that made the air between us feel charged and forbidden. It was as if the boundaries that usually confined our interactions had blurred, leaving us in a space that was undefined and ripe with potential. My name is Daniel Carter, 36, Senior Project Manager at Sinclair & Company. My emotional state, let's call it precarious. Life had been a series of careful maneuvers, much like the chess games I played against myself when insomnia visited. Work was my constant, my refuge, but lately, even that felt strained, as if I were a tightly wound clock ready to snap. Samantha's presence had a way of unsettling the routine. She was more than just a coworker. She was an enigma wrapped in professionalism, with a demeanor that could shift from icy detachment to unexpected warmth. She never raised her voice, yet she could command a room with a mere glance. The atmosphere around her was electric tonight, and I felt the current pulling me in. "Why do you always avoid lunch with me?" she began, her voice steady but probing. "Why leave meetings early when we're barely through the agenda?" Her questions hung in the air, heavy and expectant. They were inquiries that went beyond the professional, touching on the personal in a way that was both disarming and intriguing. Here in the quiet of the conference room, away from the prying eyes of our colleagues, her questions demanded an honesty I wasn't sure I was ready to provide. I opened my mouth to respond, to deflect with humor or feigned ignorance, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I found myself lowering my phone to the floor by the door, feeling a strange sense of vulnerability as I did. It was an act of trust, a small gesture that signaled a willingness to engage in the conversation she was offering. As I settled into a chair opposite her, the presentation slides continued their silent loop, but neither of us paid them any heed. The real presentation was happening here, in this charged silence, where every word and gesture held weight. It was a dance of sorts, one that required careful navigation, an understanding of the rhythms and pauses that dictated the flow of interaction. "Dan," she said softly, breaking the quiet, "it's like you're always running, even when you're standing still." Her voice was gentle, her words a soft challenge that invited introspection. It was an observation that hit closer to home than I cared to admit. I shifted in my seat, the leather creaking beneath me, and met her gaze. There was something in her eyes, a depth that spoke of understanding, a recognition of the turmoil that lay beneath my calm exterior. "I guess I like to keep moving," I replied with a half-smile that felt hollow. It was a deflection, an attempt to sidestep the truth that her words had unearthed. My life had been a series of movements, a constant motion that kept me from confronting the stillness that threatened to reveal too much. "Or maybe," she countered, "you're afraid of what might catch up with you." Her words lingered, echoing in the recesses of my mind. Was that it? Was I afraid of what might surface if I stopped long enough to let the silence catch up? It was a question that haunted me, a specter that loomed in the background of my thoughts, whispering truths I wasn't ready to face. "Sam, it's complicated," I finally said, my voice betraying a hint of the turmoil beneath my calm exterior. It was the truth, or as close to it as I was willing to admit. Life was a tangle of threads, each one pulling in a different direction, creating a tapestry that was both intricate and frayed. She nodded, as if she understood more than I was willing to reveal. Her eyes softened, and the distance between us seemed to shrink, the room becoming an intimate cocoon that shielded us from the outside world. It was a moment of connection, a bridge built on shared understanding and unspoken truths. "Complicated doesn't mean impossible," she said, a subtle challenge in her tone. Her words were a lifeline, a reminder that complexity was not an insurmountable barrier, but a landscape to navigate together. There was a knock at the door, a sudden interruption that jolted us both back to reality. My heart raced, and I felt a surge of panic at the thought of being discovered in this moment of vulnerability. But it was only the janitor, peering in with a polite nod before continuing on his rounds. The interruption was a reminder of the world beyond this room, the responsibilities and expectations that awaited us outside this cocoon of conversation. Samantha exhaled, a soft, almost imperceptible sound that mirrored my own relief. We were still safe, still wrapped in this fragile, forbidden dance. The room seemed to breathe with us, the air thick with the tension of unspoken possibilities. As the minutes ticked by, the conversation shifted, touching on lighter topics, anecdotes from our shared projects, and the occasional office gossip. Yet, beneath the surface, the tension remained, an unspoken acknowledgement of the line we were towing. It was a dance of words, a careful choreography that allowed us to explore without overstepping, to connect without risking too much. I watched her as she spoke, noting the way her hands moved to emphasize a point, the way her eyes lit up with genuine interest when she listened. There was a comfort in her presence, a stark contrast to the chaos that seemed to follow me everywhere else. In her company, the world seemed to slow, the edges softening into something more manageable. "Do you ever wonder what would happen if you just stopped?" she asked suddenly, bringing the conversation full circle. Her question was a gentle prod, an invitation to consider the possibility of stillness. "Stopped running," I clarified, though we both knew what she meant. It was a question that resonated, a call to consider the life I had built on the foundations of constant motion. "Yes," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "Stopped and let yourself be seen." Her words were a challenge, an invitation to step into the light and be known for who I truly was. It was a terrifying prospect, the idea of being exposed, of shedding the layers of pretense I had carefully constructed over the years. The question lingered between us, an invitation and a challenge rolled into one. To be seen was to be exposed, to risk vulnerability in a way that terrified me. It was a step into the unknown, a leap of faith that required more courage than I was sure I possessed. But maybe, just maybe, it was time to stop running. The thought was both thrilling and terrifying, a dichotomy that mirrored the chaos within me. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the decision settle over me. I wonder, I admitted, my voice carrying the tremor of uncertainty. It was a tentative admission, a crack in the facade that left me feeling both exposed and liberated. Samantha's smile was gentle, understanding, and for the first time, I felt a flicker of hope that maybe this new reality, this unexpected connection, could be the beginning of something different. It was a fragile hope, one that whispered of possibilities and new beginnings. Our conversation lulled into a comfortable silence, the kind that didn't demand to be filled. We were two people, bound by circumstance and curiosity, navigating the fragile terrain of newfound understanding. It wasn't a resolution, but it was a start, a tentative step towards something neither of us could quite define but were willing to explore. As the clock inched closer to midnight, I knew it was time to leave this cocoon, to re-enter the world outside where things were less certain and more daunting. But as I rose to collect my phone, I felt lighter somehow, as if the burden I'd carried had shifted, shared in the quiet, unassuming way that only Samantha could offer. "Thank you," I said, the words simple yet profound in their sincerity. They were an acknowledgement of the gift she had given me, the chance to pause and consider the life I was living. She nodded, her eyes holding mine with a quiet intensity. "Anytime, Dan." Her words were a promise, a reassurance that this connection, this understanding, was not a fleeting moment but something more enduring. As I stepped out into the empty corridor, phone in hand, I knew that the night had changed something fundamental in me. It wasn't a grand transformation, but a subtle, almost imperceptible shift. A new reality, fragile and full of possibilities, awaited us both. And as I walked away, I couldn't help but hope that maybe, just maybe, I would stop running. The journey ahead was uncertain, the path uncharted, but it was a journey I was finally ready to embark upon.